Thank you, Henrik, and very warm welcome to this afternoon, to this very interesting topic of our working group, Health and Nutrition. And it's the first working group who has a public webinar, and I'm very proud to present it and also to say we have nearly 250 registrations, so this topic must be very interesting for the public, for the experts. Only some few words about SME Connect. SME Connect is a network founded 2017 by Dr. Paul Rübig. Our members representing over 5 million SMEs. We are a platform, not a classical association, so communication is key for us. We have around 20 to 25 webinars or events, after COVID also normal events, and internal activities. We have also projects like Fair Play for SMEs or Healthy Lifestyle at Work and Home. And our working group, Health and Nutrition, has a focus on SMEs, of course, to discuss the following points like healthy aging, sport and nutrition, sustainable nutrition, research and innovation. And I think it's very interesting that we have here really an exchange from the same sector, but from different perspectives. The host of our event is always by one MEP. It is here MEP Schneider. She sent us her greetings and good luck for this discussion and presentation. And yeah, I think only some to our values. SME Connect is unpolitical, but we have a political advisory board from all political groups are pro-European, pro-trade, pro-innovation, pro-SMEs. And we have one role model, this is the honest merchant. So we are connected with the values of civil society, of social responsibility and sustainability. And yes, I think I should not say too much because we would like also have time for the discussion. And the moderation is today by Alessia Collegiandra, European Affairs Manager of ABUCA, expert of SME Working Group Health and Nutrition. And now I want to say you good luck and thank you very much for the members of the working groups. Thank you to the speakers and all who helped us to organize this event today. Thank you. The floor is yours, Alessia. Good luck.
Thanks a lot, first. So first of all, I would like to start thanking all the speakers and the participants to this event. I'm very glad that we managed today to gather together all the relevant actors from the different sectors, but also the Commission. I think it's a very good picture of the situation, and we will have a good opportunity for an exchange. So the aim of today's meeting is actually to get familiar with the proposal by the Commission. So thanks again, Mr. Verstraete, for accepting our invitation and to share the different perspectives from the different sectors, starting with the agricultural sectors and including then the industry sides, and ideally also to share practices and solutions adopted by the different stakeholders that could help us dealing with this issue. It's important that we are here today from different sectors, and we have the Commission representative here, because sometimes, and this is something that I've seen in my experience, we tend to stay within discussion of the boundaries of our association, of our group. But this is an issue that we can't solve as an individual sector. We need to discuss together, exchange information and views, because if we don't work together along the chain, it's very difficult to solve the problem. So I think it's an added value also of our working group Health and Nutrition. I think it's that we have different companies active in the group, and the aim of the group is also it's mainly to provide a forum for the smaller actors. Sometimes it's very difficult for the smaller actors at national level to be informed about what's going on in Brussels. We are used to work with the Commission. We know that the Commission is looking for feedback by the different stakeholders before putting something on the table, but it's not something granted for the actors at national level. So it's good that the Commission is there to give a positive signal to for the dialogue and the discussion. That's very important. How do we proceed today? So we will have keynote speeches by Mr. Verstraete from the Commission and Mr. Coppens from Food Supplements Europe. Then we will have the intervention from the agricultural side, Guillaume Fremondière. We will also have the experience by other two sectors. So Maximilian Wittig from the Tea and Herbal Infusion Association and Martin Einig from the European Spice Association. To be more interactive and to avoid that you get bored during the discussion, we will invite participants to ask questions. We will take one or two after each intervention, but please keep in mind that you will have time for further questions. We will have a debate at the end of all interventions. So if we don't take your questions, don't worry, we will have more time at the end. So at this point, I'm very glad to give the floor to Franz, Mr. Verstraete, who is going to give us an overview about the new limits and the new provisions. Franz, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you for the introduction. I will try to share my screen. Let me see. Of course, I will. So thank you for the invitation to give you an update on indeed the background on indeed the discussions currently nearly finalized as regards possible maximum levels for pyrrolizidine alkaloids in certain foods. So in fact, just a short background, why are we regulating pyrrolizidine alkaloids in certain foods? Well, in fact, the main aim is indeed to ensure a high level of human health protection. And for that reason, we have asked EFSA to come forward with an opinion, and indeed EFSA concluded, and I will come back on later on that there is a potential health concern. And for that reason, we in the Commission and the Member States were of the opinion that it is appropriate to regulate, to limit the presence of pyrrolizidine alkaloids in certain foods. Of course, an additional objective of having a harmonized legislation across the EU is to have an internal market so that all member states applies the same regulatory provisions as regards certain products. Of course, when we are talking about contaminants in food, of course there is, and the aim is to prevent or to reduce the presence of contaminants, plant toxins in food. There is, of course, a different wide range of possibilities, and of major importance, of course, for the prevention and the reduction, and this will be also more the focus of this webinar, is indeed the prevention, the good practices. What are the good practices which can be applied at the different stages of the production chain, starting from the farmer up to nearly the retail, can be implemented to reduce, to prevent the presence of, also in this case, of pyrrolizidine alkaloids. And of course then, for the protection of public health, we also set maximum levels, saying, okay, foods which are placed on the EU market should not contain the level of pyrrolizidine alkaloids above that level. And indeed, for the setting of these maximum levels, of course, we take into account what is considered to be of risk, and that is based upon the EFSA opinion, but also we take into account what we call, according to the principle, as low as reasonable achievable. And that is, of course, it is not, and I want to stress this, as low as reasonable achievable does reflect what can be achieved by applying good practices. It does not reflect a current situation where, for instance, for one reason or another, no attention was paid to the issue. And of course, then, for every regulatory provision, there is a need for an enforcement, and therefore we also have then particular provisions on, specific provisions on sampling and analysis in order to ensure also a uniform enforcement across the EU. So now, I just wanted to highlight that the measures, the provisions which I mentioned hereafter are not yet formally adopted by the European Commission. However, they are already quite progressed in the, I would say, in the decisions chain. And so therefore, I mentioned them in detail, but they are not yet formally adopted. So the basis is, and of course, EFSA already started to work on pyrrolizidine alkaloids back in 2011. But this has not immediately resulted in regulatory provisions. But the trigger for the current measures is indeed the EFSA opinion statement, in fact, in July 2017, where they looked into indeed more available occurrence data as regards the presence of pyrrolizidine alkaloids in tea, herbal infusions, food supplements. And indeed, the basic conclusion was that the presence of pyrrolizidine alkaloids in these foods could be of a potential possible health concern. And that was indeed then the start of the discussions to look into regulatory measures. Of course, when we are talking about pyrrolizidine alkaloids, it's a very wide group of alkaloids. But of course, when we are discussing regulatory levels, we have to exactly define what the regulatory levels refer to. And also we have asked EFSA to look into what are the relevant pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and they came up with a list of 17. I will not mention them, you see them there. And following the discussions with the member states, we added another 4. We added the european and the european N oxide, and also the heliotrine and the heliotrine N oxide, because these could be, for instance, in certain spices, be very prominent, be present, and so to add them into the sum. So we came to the sum of 21 pyrrolizidine alkaloids, for which the maximum levels are referred to. However, and also, well, they are referring to the sum of the 21, and so they are lower bound, which means that indeed each compound, each pyrrolizidine alkaloid is analyzed separately, and if it is not quantified, it has to be put at 0. And indeed, there was a discussion on what is the appropriate limit of quantification. There is a bit of difference amongst the different pyrrolizidine alkaloids, but following also the stakeholder consultation and input from the stakeholders, we have finally agreed and concluded that to have a limit of quantification at this stage of 10 microgram per kilogram per individual pyrrolizidine alkaloid. We were indeed then also at a later stage becoming aware of an issue of co-elution, usually routine analysis for control. So we have seen, following a survey done amongst laboratories within the EU, that most laboratories are using a method which indeed analyzes these 21, but which also, by analyzing these 21, there are also 14 other ones which are co-eluted. And of course, for a regulatory provision, we have to say, well, you measure these 21, but you measure also the other 14. So we are indeed saying, well, in the analysis, these 14 has also to be calculated. In case you are using a more sophisticated method where these 14 are separated, well, then you have to calculate them with the 21 to compare, to be able to compare the results when indeed they are co-eluting with the other ones. So when these 14, they are these ones with the indication with which of the 21 they are potentially co-eluting. I will also not go into that detail as regards the individual pyrrolizidine alkaloids. So, as I said, also as regards the sampling provisions, we will have still to work out specific sampling provisions. Of course, we have to take into account the specific nature of the products covered by the legislation, tea, herbal infusions, culinary herbs. So indeed, we should not, indeed, of food supplements, indeed, sample sizes, for instance, of 10 kilogram are certainly not appropriate. So we have to define appropriate sample sizes, ensuring representativity for the lot, but also indeed taking into account the nature of the product. As regards the methods of analysis, we have already discussed what is the recovery to be achieved, the repeatability and the reproducibility criteria, and as I already mentioned, an LOQ for individual PAs. Of course, we have one provision also when we are talking about liquid teas. We have for infants and young children, we have there a specific maximum level for the liquid, and there, of course, we have also an LOQ for on the liquid product. So what are now these levels? And as you can see, there are the divergences in the levels do reflect what we see from the data available, indeed what is achievable. For instance, within the herbal infusions, we got information from stakeholder organizations that certain herbs, which are the basis for herbal infusions, that indeed, based upon what's currently achievable by good practices, the levels are indeed somewhat higher than for other herbal infusions. And this is taken into account in the setting of the level. So indeed, as you can see, from a toxicological point of view, it would be, I would say, logic to set one single level for tea and herbal infusions. But in order to take into account the aspect of what is achievable by good practices, there we also then make a differentiation as regards the levels. And as you can see then, for herbal infusions of rooibos, anise, lemon balm, chamomile, thyme, peppermint, lemon verbena, and mixtures exclusively of these dried herbs, the level is 400 microgram per kilogram, so which means indeed the lower band. So it means it is indeed the sum of the only quantified pyrrolizidine alkaloids. And so it is not indeed the non-quantified are put at 0. Then for the other herbal infusions, the level is 200. And then for the tea, the Camellia sinensis and the flavored tea, level is 150. Then we have a specific lower level for tea for infants and young children, point of quite of discussion within the member states, 75. And also, as indeed we know that these teas are also sold as liquids on the EU market, there is also a specific level for indeed a very low level, but reflecting what is normally indeed I would say correspondence between the dried product and the liquid product is 1 microgram per liter. So we also indeed have indeed seen that there are significant levels of pyrrolizidine alkaloids in food supplements containing herbal ingredients, including extracts, and there also the level is 400. And we have also, and that's also in the EFSA statement and the exposure assessment, seen that there are significant levels in pollen and pollen-based products or pollen-based food supplements. And there, indeed, based upon specific information provided by, indeed, the Association of Beekeepers, we indeed set a level of 500. And then we had a discussion as regards the dried herbs, the dried culinary herbs, where we had a level of 400. However, we could see that there are particular culinary herbs which are indeed having a higher level. Indeed, borage, lovage, marjoram, and oregano. And indeed, based upon the current available data, it means also that even with the higher level of 1,000, there will be still to be within the coming 2 years significant efforts to be done in order to achieve this higher level for these dried herbs. Because indeed we had the borage leaves also as a vegetable on the market. We had then for that particular issue also had to set a specific level. It's not as a spice, but not as a herb, but as a vegetable. We had indeed a specific level on a fresh basis for borage leaves. And finally, within the spices, we could see from the data that from all data we had that indeed there was a particular issue with cumin seeds, and there also we had a maximum level of 400 microgram per kilogram. So as I said, these are draft maximum levels still at this stage, but they are already quite progressed. There has already been a vote in the standing committee. They are now under scrutiny by Parliament and Council. and indeed foreseen for adoption by the Commission later on this year. Of course, as I already said, and as I already referred to in my presentation, we are aware that for certain products, there are still efforts to be done as well on the agricultural sides, as well and further on in the chain, for indeed further reducing the presence of pyrrolizidine alkaloids. And for that reason, we have indeed agreed on a deferred application of the measure. So the maximum levels will apply as foreseen as from the 1st of July 2022, so within nearly 2 years. And then also we had what is indeed also a bit of an exception in this case, but also related to the nature of the product, that we have also foreseen for indeed a provision. Normally we do not do that for as pyrrolizidine alkaloids are genotoxic carcinogens. There indeed usually we do not foresee a long period for products which have been placed on the market before the date of application that they can stay on the market. But we are aware of the long shelf life of certain products on these dried herbs and the food supplements, and also the herbal infusion and tea. And for that reason, we have indeed discussed in the standing committee and indeed a transitional period for products placed on the market before the 1st of July 2022, so that they can remain on the market if they were lawfully placed on the market before the 1st of July until the 31st of December 2023, so another additional 18 months. So with that, and I think there are still a number of other speakers, and to allow for indeed questions and answers, I here stop my presentation, and I thank you for your attention. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thanks a lot, Franz. It was very useful because I guess that most of our participants didn't know about these new provisions yet. So I think it's a very good occasion, first of all, to share the information. I would like to welcome the latest participants who just joined, and I'm very happy to see that we also have people from national authorities. That's very good, because I think it's essential for the measure to be efficient and adopted in due time to work also at national level with the national authorities. So I'm having a look at the Q&As. I've seen one on herbal medicines, but as the group is mainly on food and the proposal is on foods, I would focus on this specific sector. I have a question for Franz. Are you going to work also on similar limits for other food products that were contained in the EFSA opinion?
Well, indeed, when we would identify other foods, and one of the issues which indeed will be the first one that we will consider in the future is indeed also the honey itself. So we did now look only to pollen and pollen-based food supplements, but also honey will be had a closer look for regulation. And in case we see through the monitoring that there might be other foodstuffs which might contain significant levels of pyrrolizidine alkaloids, they will also be subject to discussions for possible regulation. Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the clarification. So now I would like to give the floor to Patrick, Director for Scientific and Regulatory Affairs in Food Supplements Europe. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yes, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I share my screen. I trust that this is visible on the screen. Yes, I'm Director of Scientific and Regulatory Affairs at Food Supplements Europe. And one of the activities of our association that represents the manufacturers of food supplements and also the manufacturers of ingredients for food supplements is the development of guidelines in order to help our members and others to apply the legislative framework that applies to food supplements. And that legislative framework is very broad and not always so easy to do. So one of our activities is having these guidelines, which are freely available on our website. You can download them, and they can help you apply the legislation. And as Mr. Verstraete indicated, the pyrrolizidine alkaloids has been under discussion for quite a time now, and we have seen the necessity to develop also a guidance document to help the manufacturers of food supplements apply the limits that are in the process of being established. And as you have seen, there is only a very short transition period, which is for plants and plant-derived products not always so easy to use. And we hope that our guidance document is going to be instrumental for those manufacturers that produce products that could contain pyrrolizidine alkaloids. Now, the supply chain of botanicals is, of course, very complex, and there are a lot of intermediates, but it all starts with the collection of the raw materials. And there are a number of different actors that do collect the plants. You have, of course, the businesses who collect the plants in the wild. You also have cultivation of plants, and you also have a lot of small and medium-sized companies that intervene in the trade of plants. These are all, which is very important for SME Connect. These are to the vast extent all small and medium-sized companies. Even a lot of one-man businesses are involved in that. The plants are gathered together by suppliers before they are treated and sold to the manufacturers. And that's an important step, because you can imagine that if there is a contamination of pyrrolizidine alkaloid at the stage of one of the collectors or growers, and it is mixed with the harvests of other growers and collectors, this may be problematic then for the supplier to provide material that is compliant with the legislation to the rest of the supply chain. As soon as plants end up with extract manufacturers or manufacturers of final products, the herbs are homogenized, and any contamination or any pyrrolizidine alkaloids that would be present in the raw material will be mixed and will be in the whole batch of products, which is, of course, at a stage that there is very little to be done. Therefore, it's really very important to understand that the management of PA in the supply chain of food supplements is a collective responsibility of all the actors in that chain. Now, the legislation doesn't make it so easy for us, because as you can see, the stage of control is at the manufacturer's side. The limits have been set for the product as it is intended to be consumed, so the final product. And actually the manufacturers cannot in itself do a lot in order to contain any contamination with pyrrolizidine alkaloids, because the origin of a contamination lies at the stage of the agriculture, at the stage of the collection, at the stage of the growers. And therefore, pretty much the only measure that manufacturers can do is see what the limits mean for their individual products and set specifications that the raw materials must meet in order to ensure that the final product is still meeting the limits that have been put into the legislation. And therefore, it is in the interest of the manufacturers of food supplements to really have close contacts with the suppliers and to ensure that the suppliers understand what is required and understand what they need to do. And we know there is a quite important gap between the knowledge of the suppliers, because they are farmers, they are not so close to the legislation as final product manufacturers, and therefore a lot of education will need to take place. And we hope that our guidance document can be a helpful tool for that, because if in the end a grower ends up with a batch of products that exceeds the specification, then unfortunately for the grower will not be able to sell his product to the final manufacturer. So it is important for everybody to take their responsibility and to understand what can be done. But it's not easy. And I think that people should not underestimate the size of the efforts that are requested from the farmers, the growers, and the collectors. Because pyrrolizidine alkaloids are everywhere in nature. Over 600 PAs and PA oxides have been identified in over 6,000 species of plants. There are 13 families where you find pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and they grow in nature. So they are very likely to grow also in pastures where the herbs that are important for food supplements are grown. And if you look at the potential sources of pyrrolizidine alkaloid, the vast majority of pyrrolizidine alkaloids do not come from the plants that are used for the manufacturing of the food supplement, but they come from co-harvesting of weeds that grow in the same field. So that's a really important factor that the growers will need to consider, because even if they grow plants that do not produce PA, they can still be contaminated with weeds that do. It's only a very small fraction of products in which the PAs come from products from plants that do produce PAs and are intentionally used. And we take the position that such plants should not be used for food supplement manufacturing unless it can be ensured that the raw material is such that PAs can be absent. Like for instance, borage oil. That comes from the seed. There are no pyrrolizidine alkaloids in the seed, so appropriate quality measures can be applied in order to still harvest or produce oil from borage, despite the fact that borage leaves itself are a very important source of PA. What is also important is that a number of plants, a number of weeds can contain very high levels of PA, of pyrrolizidine alkaloids, like senecio, for instance. And this is a simulation that has been made that indicates that in order to meet the limit, it may be sufficient that there are 6 plants in a whole hectare of plants to contaminate the harvest and to ensure that the harvest is no longer complying with the specifications. So this is of course a theoretical assessment, but still it shows how difficult it is, because you can imagine people that are familiar with what is 1 hectare of products, well, try and go to 1 hectare and try to remove all the weeds that are there in order to ensure that less than 6 are remaining in that pasture. It's very difficult, it's very hard, and therefore this needs to be part of the integrated weed management that the growers should apply. What is also important is that it is not even possible in a number of cases to clearly identify a PA containing plant or weed from the crop. There are some examples on the slide where you see that pyrrolizidine producing plants grow together with the crop and are very easy to overlook. And that's also the reason why some crops are more liable for pyrrolizidine alkaloid contamination, because the plants that contain the pyrrolizidine alkaloids look so similar to the crop itself. And also the harvesting method is challenging because you have different possibilities. You have of course manual collection, and then the collector can see what he collect, or also collection in the wild. He can see what he is collecting. But as soon as you have mechanically assisted manual harvesting, or you have full mechanical harvesting, it's no longer possible to do that that separation at the moment of harvest. So you need to implement measures way before the harvest. What is also critical is the sampling. Of course, the authorities, like Mr. Verstraeten has said, is only interested for food supplements in the sampling method of the final product, because that is where the level is where the level applies to. But for us, as manufacturers, the sampling is far more important at the start of the supply chain. And the less the product, the raw material is homogenized, the less it becomes reliable to rely on sampling, because if you have only the dried herb, it's very difficult to have a representative sample that can identify the presence of PA plants. The more you have homogenized it, like in a powder or a liquid, it's far more easy, but it's too late. Because if you only detect PA at that stage, you can throw away your whole production. So sampling is really critical, and also the analytical methods are critical, because there are some methods, but they are at this stage mainly in very specialized labs, and as a consequence also, they are quite expensive. So asking for growers and collectors to systematically do analysis of the product that they cultivate is a challenge from a resource perspective. So these are also challenges that the supply chain will have to overcome. And our guidance document is actually based on 4 pillars of actions. The first, I have already mentioned, is education. We need to educate the whole supply chain. There are a lot of people still supplying materials to the food supplement manufacturers that are simply not aware of the risk. So we hope that our guidance document can help that. What we also recommend is that growers apply the tiered RAS characterization for determining the risk of cultivation environment, as it is proposed by Tea and Herbal Infusions Europe. It's a very good approach to estimate how high the risk is that you have a contamination with pyrrolizidine producing weeds, depending on the environment in which your field lies. Adherence to good agriculture and collection practices obviously is also critical, because that is not only important for pyrrolizidine alkaloid, it's also important for the traceability and the safety of the plant. So that is a system that is already in place and applied by many growers and collectors, but that is really one important element. And then an integrated weed management is key in order to avoid PA plants growing on the fields. And if you go to our guidance document, you will see that there are quite a number of measures that can be taken, including observation and inspection of the fields, control of your seeds in order to avoid that there are PA producing plant seeds in it. You can apply mechanical measures. You should dispose waste in an appropriate way to avoid recontamination of the field. Crop rotation is an important aspect. Management of the field edges and weed-free buffer zones is important. The cleanliness of your operation and your equipment is critical. Optimizing harvest technologies can help, like for instance, the height of the cutting of your plants, and also processing controls are important. This is critical because there are only a few things that you can do from the chemical side. Herbicides is very difficult to apply because the limits of residues are so low. And also what is important is that you cannot apply this in organic production. What is important also is at the stage of the manufacturing. So after the supply of the material, because it is important that manufacturers of food supplements do take on board PA contamination as a critical control point in their HACCP system, in their quality system, and that they do a risk assessment based on their products, based on historic data, and then see how big the risk is. Adequate inspection of the raw materials, testing of the raw materials, and implementing processing controls are also very important factors that manufacturers during processing should apply. Also for that, you will find a lot of good recommendations in our guidance document. So this is a quite short summary of what you can find in the guidance document. What I've not mentioned is that we also have included pictures of plants and weeds in order to help people identify the weeds in the field. And we would advise everybody to go to our website, download this publication, and spread it as widely as possible in the supply chain of botanicals for food supplements, so we can, within the 2 years that we have, raise sufficient awareness and ensure that there is a supply of conforming goods at the end of that transition period. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Patrick. What you have done, it's very useful. Some of the aspects Patrick mentioned would be addressed in a moment by Guillaume, the agricultural side. As you said, it's extremely important working together, even because probably the biggest challenge is for the growers, actually. We got some questions, some for Mr. Verstraete, other on more on good agricultural practices. That is something that you mentioned. Actually, I think as one of the participants recalled, yeah, indeed, that would be the first step, not just to ensure a low level of PAs, but also to ensure traceability, as you said, and quality of the products. I have a question, because you said that it's not easy sometimes for our companies to understand that they need to talk with the growers, and they need to pass the information to make them ready actually to provide raw material that is compliant. So how did you address this topic within the association? Were the members reactive to that? It took some time because I guess most of them don't have the agricultural part, so maybe they are missing some kind of information.
Well, there is now with the law, there is realization. So it took time in order to inform and to make sure that the manufacturers realize that if they do not take sufficient action towards their supply chain, that in the end they may not be able to source materials that are compliant with their specifications in order to ensure that their final products meet the legal limits. So now there is quite some awareness, but there is still work to do. And we advocate that our guidance document is spread as widely as possible to growers, to farmers, to manufacturers, and also, of course, we represent the manufacturers, but they are not all members of our association. The guidance document is freely downloadable, so it's a resource that everybody can use in order to take care of this business. But we are fully aware that more work will need to be done in order to raise awareness far wider than it is currently.
We have a last question for you from the audience. The guidance document covers only weeds that grow in Europe or worldwide? Because, of course, the participant is referring to the moving of botanicals all around the world. So is that something that you consider in the guidance document?
We do not consider it because the limits that apply to the final product are irrespective of the origin of the plant. So it's up to, it applies to all products that will be sold on the market in Europe. And that means also that plants that are not grown in Europe will have to be sourced and contain levels of PA that comply with the specifications in order to ensure that the final products meet the legal limit. So it applies to all plants irrespective of where they are grown.
Maybe the last one, because I really like it, and that would be also for the colleagues of the other associations later, from the Irish Health Department. Do SMEs feel that they are sufficiently informed of legislative changes and the outcomes through engagement with the Commission, or would they prefer national competent authorities to take a greater role in providing guidance?
Well, it's our general impression, because also our sector as food supplements consists of more than 95% of small and medium businesses, that there is a huge gap between what happens at European level in terms of legislation and what people allow. Sometimes we are asked for data, we do not get data because there is no awareness, and then the legislator is surprised that there is reaction at the moment that a law is adopted and going into place. But that is actually the consequence of the fact that there is such a wide gap between small and medium-sized businesses and the legislation. We try to cover that gap. And I hope that also other associations are trying to cover that gap. But we also trust that national authorities do that because they are far closer to their local businesses than we are. And it's also in the interest of the national economy in order to not have consequences for the businesses, that the national SMEs are aware and up to speed with the legislation that is going to come. We may see that the deadline or the transition period of 2 years for this one is too short. We may see that. And then I think it would be wise for national authorities to listen to the practical problems that growers and collectors will have, because these people will be out of business if they cannot meet the specifications. That's clear.
Thanks a lot. For the other participants, I noted your questions to Mr. Verstraeten, and we can discuss at the end of all the interventions. And now I would like to give the floor to Guillaume Fremondier from ITEPMAI, which is the Interprofessional Institute for Aromatic and Medicinal Plants. And please, Guillaume, if I'm wrong, please correct me. So you, in the Institute, you gather researchers, growers and industry, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, yes. And we are doing some experimentation to improve raw material from crop management and from the genetic point of view, with a specific lab to control that what we are doing is going the right way. Can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you for your invitation. Thank you, Patrick, also for all what you said already. I will try to go deeper with the reality of the grower and farmers that are faced to pyrrolizidine alkaloids, and for the moment they are trying to struggle with that that problem, and because they don't want to lose their market and they want to be on that business for long term. So farmers have been aware of the dangerousity of pyrrolizidine alkaloids since quite a long time now, and they are trying to get rid of all pyrrolizidine alkaloids in their fields, because it's a very important challenge from the agricultural point of view. Because as we know, the PA are coming from the weeds, and the weeds are coming from the fields, and we are working with the fields. So if the entry door is here, we have to fight against it at the beginning, at the very beginning of the supply chain, and farmers are there. So if PA comes from weeds, getting rid of the weeds cleans the raw materials. That's the first point. So that's what the farmers are doing, but when we are doing analysis, even if the raw material is totally clean of all weeds, we still find some PA. It means that PA are coming maybe from weeds, but they don't have to be there to put PA on the raw material. It means that there is a lack of scientific knowledge at that point, which is a crucial point for the grower. Up to now, what we know about pyrrolizidine alkaloids, that they come from the weeds. We already said that. So you can have it with co-harvesting. Patrick already said that. If you consider senecio, for example, if you have some senecio in your raw material, you will have PA and maybe too much PA at the end. So you got to get rid of all the weeds that produce these contaminants. But when you do that, we consider that we still have some PA, because you can have it from pollen, also from dust, and from contaminated soil, maybe with an horizontal transfer of the PA from the soil to the plant. So it's a very crucial problem, because even if the soil is clean, you can have some problem. It means that there is different points that have to be managed, and it's very difficult because we don't have the scientific information to manage it. If you consider the implementation of a crop, which is the implementing the crop means first choosing the fields, but how to control the quality of the soil. There is no information on the quality of the soil considering the pH. We don't know how to control the soil to be sure that you don't have any pH in the soil that comes from weeds that was in the fields before. How deep you have to dig to take a sample of soil, how to do the sample of the soil to control. This is so many questions that we don't have any answer. So we cannot up to now control the quality of the soil according to the level content of pH in the soil. There is also the problem of the weed pressure. The weed pressure is really important because if you know your fields, it can be easier, but sometimes you get new fields and you don't know the stock of weeds that you have inside the field. So sometimes you can find some very clean fields, but sometimes it's very hard to have clean fields. And depending on the type of weed, it can be very different, and it can be much more difficult to get rid of those weeds. Another point will be the remnants of the pH in the soil, because the pH can be there, and we don't know for many times. For example, if you get a clean soil for many years, maybe the pHs, which are very stable molecules, are there from years to years because you get weeds something like 10 years ago. We don't know that, and it's a very crucial point. And then there is the capacity of the plant of interest, so the plant you need, the raw material at the end that will go further in the supply chain, so the capacity of this plant to concentrate pH. So you will not plant or sow a species in a very hard field. So you have to know the quality of the field and the capacity of the plant before starting the production. And from that point of view, we do not have any answer, and it's very difficult for grower. Considering the management of the weeds, it's done by all growers. But if you collect some different material, like only flowers, which is sometimes manual harvesting, you still have some pH, but you have only the flowers. There is no co-harvest, as we already said. So if you want to get rid of all the weeds, it's very problematic, because if you're in conventional, there is a lack of herbicides. Patrick talked about maximal residue, but there is also the availability of the molecules, because there is less and less herbicides authorized on the market, and less volume that are authorized too. So depending on the herbicide available, you cannot get rid with this strategy, with a chemistry strategy. And what about organic farming and wild collection? If you consider horizontal transfer in wild collection, you cannot get rid of all the weeds or the plants that are producing pH just in the neighborhood of the wild collected species. Nevertheless, you can have some pH in this type of material. If you consider the strategy of growers, it's putting some manual in the field to get rid manually of the weeds. Depending on the field, it's a minimum of 60 hours per hectare. And as Patrick already said, only 6 plants can commit contaminated whole plots. So 60 hours per hectare only for pH. I mean, only for plants, for weeds that produce contaminated contaminants like pH. 60 hours in the case of France, time 15, it means that there is an overcost of 900 euros per hectare for the growers. At this stage, it's not analyzed, it's just extra cost. And it's not optimized because you have to train the growers. So the training of the growers guidelines are very important, but you have to train the growers on all the species, the weeds that are able to produce pH. There are a lot of species that that are producing PA, we already say that. You have to train the growers to recognize those weeds at all the phenological stage. If you remove the weeds at the adult stage, it's too late. You got to get rid of it when there are only 2 leaves or even less, if possible. It means that you have to be very accurate to see them and to recognize them. A second part, which is not optimized, is the mapping of the plot. So mapping of the plot can permit to decide to not harvest because there is too much weeds. That could be a solution. When there are a lot of weeds, it's quite easy. The growers are knowing their plots, so they can decide to not to harvest a part of the plot. But when you have small plants or few plants, I remind you that 6 senecio per hectare can be awful for 1 plot. In 1 hectare, 6 plants in 1 hectare. So it's not good. So mapping of the plants, so strategy with cameras and things like that to map the plot can be very interesting for the strategy of hewing first and harvesting in second stage. So phenological stage of removal, I already talked about it. The problem is the training, and support decision system would be very interesting for the growers to be sure that they are dealing with the PA according to an economical point of view, because you can put more and more manual workers to get rid of the weeds, but it won't be possible to be economically available. So it's a crucial point and a crucial challenge for all the growers. If you consider the end of the culture and the post-harvest, you need to make some analysis, but there is different methods that are available. So the question can be the robustness of the method that is used. It's less and less true because there is a standardization of the method. Nevertheless, from one lab to another lab, the results are not the same. The other question would be the quality of the sampling of the raw material on post-harvest, but also in the field. We are talking about spot contamination. One weed can contaminate some square meter, but maybe not all. But if you take a sample specifically in this part of the plot, you will have very high concentration of PA, which does not represent the whole lot. So it's a key problem. The sampling is a key problem. Same thing on raw material. Most of the time, you have entire plants. So if you want to collect a sample, it will be also a spot contamination. So if you are bad luck, you will have very high level of PA. If you are good luck, you will have very low level of PA. But it does not represent the quality of the whole raw material. And then there is another point which is not taken into consideration. It's the transfer rate of pyrrolizidine alkaloids from raw material to final product. We know that some of the PAs are very stable and will go further and further inside the supply chain, and some other PA are not doing the same thing. And depending on the method, you can maybe not get rid of it, but get lower contamination. And I think it has to be considered where during the acceptation of the raw material at the early stage. If we go deeper on that point, for sure there are thresholds are important for PA. Nevertheless, we have seen that not all the PA have the same toxicity. Maybe it can be interesting to put a threshold on specific group of PAs according to their toxicity first and their evolution during the industrial process. So it can be, might be more easy for grower to deal with their weeds and to deal with their plants to produce raw material that comply with the authorized level content of PA. So I've tried to be brief, but I hope that you understood that The regulation are fully accepted by growers, and they are trying to do their best to complain with this regulation, but there is a lack of scientific knowledge while the regulations are already adopted. And because of this lack of scientific knowledge, we don't have all the tools that permit to manage the PA in the field. Consider also that there is a lack of epidemiologic studies on the occurrence of cancer in human caused by PA, because before the regulation, we did not hear about any problem with the raw material that have been sold before the regulation. Another problem, and Patrick already said that, it's the cost that is reported from the downstream supply chain to the upstream supply chain. If it's a farm to fork strategy, so all the supply chain have to be concerned by this problem and help the growers and the farmers to struggle with the PA with the proper tool and the right tool. Otherwise, no one will sell anything at the end of the day. So thank you for your attention.
Thanks very much, Guillaume. We are a bit running late, but I have a quick question for you from one of the participants. It's about PA weeds in abandoned fields. So is it something that you are considering? Is it something that you have studied? Because they recall that in such areas you may have PA plants that then can spread a bit everywhere. So then can be an issue also for the cultivated fields.
That's right. All the environment of the production fields, like abandoned fields, ages, and all the environment is really important, and it can have a great incidence on the quality of the raw material. So it's quite difficult to face this problem, especially if you are not the owner of the neighborhood. So for that reason, the dynamic of the PA has to be studied to be sure that you are growing with the proper tools. And an abandoned fields is abandoned at one time, but can be a production field some years after. And if you still have some weeds that produce contaminants, it can be very problematic when this field is returning to production.
Perfect, thanks a lot. So I'll give the floor now to Maximilian Wittig from the Herbal Infusion Association. Maximilian, the floor is yours.
So in the meantime, I would like to thank the organizers for giving THIE the opportunity to share its experience on the PA issue. THIE is a European association representing the interests of producers and traders of tea and herbal infusions in the EU. Many thanks to my colleagues Patrick and Guillaume, who already mentioned a lot of very important aspects, which makes it quite easy for me now. So I will try to be a little bit quicker. Next. The issue of PAs for the tea industry started in 2013 when in Germany, the Federal Institute for Risk Assessment published results of a research project and together with that, a new analytical method for PAs in herbal infusions and teas. And it has to be noted that to that date, it was not possible to detect substances like PAs in trace amounts in plant material. And for example, or especially the analysis of these very complicated substances in tea and herbal infusions is due to the matrix very difficult. And so this became a new challenge for the tea industry. And this is 7 years ago. But nevertheless, next, the industry immediately started root cause analysis. some points were already mentioned. We saw individual findings of seeds from PA-producing plants in seed material for tea herbs. So this was one entry door to PA plants coming to the fields. Another point was the occurrence of PA-producing weeds in a single so-called spots. This already mentioned. This is also very important because it makes it a little bit difficult to estimate the load of foreign plants on a field or in a harvested lot, for example. The occurrence of PA-producing plants in cultures as well as in bordering fields and fallow land makes it a little bit difficult because this is an area of conflict when you think about all the measures undertaken to promote biodiversity and bee protection. And of course, the main point is PA-producing plants are harvested unintentionally by machines. So it is not the target plant which is harvested, but some plants which are not detected before harvest. And I'll show you later a picture or a calculation which shows the extreme challenge of this issue. Very important is that there is no reference in scientific literature and also no indication by our analysis that the tea plant itself, so the Camellia sinensis plants, from which black and green tea and others are produced, or those plants which are used for herbal infusions can produce these PA plants. So it's really, the contamination really comes from foreign plant material. And another point is that those PAs occur in very high concentration, in very high levels. So if you look at, for example, the Indian heliotrope, approximately 12 grams per kilogram PAs are in dried material of these plant species. And if you can remember the levels we are talking, proposed as maximum levels by the Commission, we are in a range of a microgram per kilogram, which is a lot of dimensions below. Next. As I already mentioned, just want to show you the dimension of this PA issue. Patrick also showed it in a table. I tried to give you an impression using some pictures. On the left side, you see a chamomile field. And within this very small picture, it seems to be very easy to identify foreign plants or plants which do not look like a chamomile plant. But if you transfer it to reality, you see that the presence of about 6 PA weeds on an hectare of cultivation with about 60,000 crop plants, for example, chamomile plants, can be detected in the harvest by means of PA levels determined with modern analytical methods. So we are in a contamination range of 0.01% of foreign plant material, which now can be traced by modern analytical methods. So this was not possible before, and it is also very difficult if you look the situation, 6 PA plants in opposite to 60,000 crop plants. It's also very difficult to find them all with human abilities. So next one. Based on our investigations, we try to implement different measures from field to cup to improve the situation, to avoid PAs entering the crop. So, for example, the seed material is checked for contamination where this is possible. Also, and this is a very important point, it was mentioned earlier, the education. Growers and suppliers are made aware of the PA issue and trained, in particular with informative material. So raising awareness is a very important step when you want to avoid PAs, or if you want to lower PA levels in your products. Foreign plants, especially those which are known as PA-containing weeds, are removed mechanically and particularly manually. It depends on the crop, of course. You have to inspect the fields before harvesting. This is very important. And with regard to irrigation corridors or margins of fields, you have to remove weeds because they can enter your crop from this position out. So this is a little bit in conflict with all the measures for bee protection. What is also true is that there where it is necessary, you have to use herbicides, but this is also still very difficult due to the very low levels which are allowed to be used. And of course, a very important tool for the PA measures is the implementation of the analysis in the framework of the company's own quality management. So you are able to screen your offer samples or your raw materials or even the finished products, which is important if you want to look if your products are compliant with the new maximum levels. And of course, as an association, we collected data since 2013 into databases, one for tea and one for herbal infusions, to have a good overview over the development, the improvements, and which are still the crops or the commodities of concern. Next, please. But our core measure is the setup of a code of practice, a little bit similar to the guideline Patrick also set up for his association. It is, of course, addressed to all parties involved in the supply chain because you have to work together. Everyone is responsible for his field to take care that the PAs are as low as possible in the product. We have integrated background information on the PA issue. And I think, which is very important, we try to identify the critical process steps and the characterization of the respective hazard, which can occur, including also procedures and precautionary measures to reduce the risk. So everyone in the supply chain has a guidance how to react and is made aware that there can occur a risk. This code of practice is free available on our website, and this is the link you can find it. Next one, please. Just to give you one short example for the application in practice. So for example, you look at the process step, for example, prior to cultivation, which is the hazard. For example, PA weeds on the field and area bordering can occur. So how is the probability? In this case, it is very high. And then we give some advice how to react to this risk. And of course, we also make clear whose responsibility is this to manage this risk. Please, next one. This is just to show you the toolbox which we have alongside the supply chain. The emphasis was made that it is very important at the beginning of of the chain that you look for the PAs, because once they entered the chain, it is very hard to get rid of them. So you have some tools, for example, analysis of raw materials or analysis of finished products, but at the moment you do not have any tools to get rid of them very effectively. So what I showed you on the side of the chain is more or less visions for the future, which will not completely solve the problem, but will help to become continuously better. So for the one thing, there are at the moment there are different companies developing weed control robots, which use very high sophisticated technology to find or identify single foreign plants on a very big field. Then, of course, which would be very good to have, especially in the countries of origin, are rapid tests to get an idea about the harvest. Where do you stand with that? And of course, this would be a very good solution for all producers, a sorting machine which is able to sort out a foreign plant material bill. But I have to admit, all these three things are not currently available. Next one, last slide. This is one slide I already showed 5 years ago, but I'm convinced that it's still fully valid. The challenge for all producers in this field is to assure quality and safety of products in the area of conflict between the global growing and trade, because we are sourcing our products all over the world, the promotion of biodiversity, when I look to the plans of the Green Deal, for example, and the continuous reduction of herbicides with, of course, when you use less pesticides, of course, the pressure of weeds is greater in the fields of cultivation. So with this conclusion, I will finish my presentation. Next one, and thank you for your kind education.
Quick question because we're a bit late. Very practical question. So if you can just briefly answer to that, if you have this information, of course. How much would that cost to take PA's analysis, actually? Do you know that?
Oh, one analysis, I have no idea. I think I estimate it's about 150 euros.
Okay, so it's quite high, the cost.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot. So our last speaker, Martin, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to give the presentation at your meeting today. I hope you can see the screen. You can see the slides.
No, we cannot.
You cannot. Okay.
We only see your picture.
This is me. So that's not right. So.
You know how to do it on the bottom?
Yeah, I think so, but it's just wait. Yeah, I have to be in full screen mode. Okay. There it is. Now you should see the slides,
Yes.
correct?
Perfect. Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So full screen mode. Okay. So as I'm the last presenter in this group for today, I brought you a concrete example on how we deal with PA contamination in a specific case. First of all, I would like to introduce our association to you with just a few words. The European Spice Association represents more than 350 companies located in Europe. All of them work in the dried culinary herbs and spice industry, come from 20 countries around Europe, and we additionally have about 70 members at the moment from countries outside Europe, mainly from the countries of origin of our products. Our association has its main objective to pool and spread the expertise of our members in order to promote the use of pure, safe, and wholesome herbs and spices that are truth to name and provide the quality and safety that is expected by the consumer. Okay, our activities on pyrrolizidine alkaloids in herbs and spices. What we did in advance internally in our association is we divided the problem of PA contaminations into 3 main topics, which were all led by separate working groups in our technical committee. You can see the groups here. The first one is developing action plans and mitigation strategies. The second one is responsible for the communication, for example, the member companies, other stakeholders, or official bodies. And the third group evaluates current analytical methods, toxicity, and also prepares risk assessments for the consumers. A very important point for this work is the close cooperation with institutions and associations in the producing countries. As we already heard before, no matter how good your strategy is, you have to bring it to country of origin. And as most of our products are not sourced in Europe, this is a very important point. Okay, so what are the most important questions to derive a successful minimization strategy? First one, which spices are affected? How do PAs get into these spices? What are counter strategies, and how can these strategies be implemented at the country of origin? As PA compounds are a natural defense mechanism, we had first to get an overview which spices are affected, where should we concentrate on. And in order to clarify this question, we contacted a university in Germany already in 2016, which is specialized in the analysis of PAs, and worked out a study together. And I will show you something about the study here. Our aim was to obtain first an overview of PA levels in herbs and spices to target minimization efforts. The results of these studies were published in ToxScience early in 2020. And our part in this study, the ESA part, was to provide the samples, representative samples. We collected 305 samples for this study. We covered 15 different matrices. You can see them on the left side. There you have the cake plot, where you can see we had 38 samples of peppercorns, 32 samples of parsley, and so on, and tried to cover the main herbs and spices which were consumed by European population. The samples came from 36 different countries, and they were analyzed on 44 PA and their respective N-oxide compounds. All right. In this slide, you can see a very comprehensive summary of the PA levels found in all samples. The graph is very detailed, so I will not go all the way through it, but the first thing you can see is the ratio between positive and negative samples. Positive samples in light red, negative samples in green. And what we found is that it's on the left, 58% of all samples that were tested were positive. And the second thing is you can find PAs in all matrices. No matter which one we chose, you can find PAs in there. Mostly at very low levels, below 10 microgram per kilogram, but it's like a virus that infects all our products. And by far the highest values were found in oregano. The maximum level found in this study was about 24,600 microgram per kilogram, which is quite a lot. Oregano had 88% of all samples tested positive. The mean value was about 3,140 microgram per kilogram, and the median was at 163 microgram per kilogram. You have to take into account that you have a logarithmic scale here. That means the distance between the points is not intuitive. For oregano, if you look at all samples, 29% of them were above 1,000 microgram per kilogram. So, as we now knew that oregano causes the main or the biggest problems in respect to herbs and spices, we took a look at this plant. To tackle this issue, we first collected information on the background of oregano cultivation. We have summarized some facts here. The most important origin for oregano consumed in Europe is Turkey, with approximately 90% of all imports to the European Union. The cultivation region is also very concentrated. It's the Denizli province, highlighted in red on the map. There are about 40,000 hectares under cultivation with an annual production of 22,000 metric tons of already dried oregano. The field size varies between 1,000 to 2,000 hectares, and you have approximately a number of over 5,000 farmers concerned in this business. Okay, this was our starting point for the development of a minimization strategy. So as oregano does not produce PAs by itself, this is well known. The main source for the PAs measured in oregano was decided to be unintentionally harvested weeds, like in most of the other crops already talked about.
Martin, just a quick note to the participants, please stay with us. We're a bit late, but
yeah,
we have a few questions for Mr. Verstraete after this presentation.
Okay, I will hurry a little bit up. So, okay, the mitigation strategy came down to improve field hygiene, as you cannot really clean already harvested herbs for weeds. So 4 points which were very important: know the polluter, raise awareness of the farmers, effectively remove the weed plants from the field, and prevent new seeding. In the presentation or in the study on PAs that I mentioned, 44 PA and Pano compounds were determined, and all of them individually. So therefore we knew which PA compounds were mainly found in oregano. And then in close cooperation with suppliers and farmers in Denizli, we collected information about which weeds can potentially occur and whether they contain PA and which PA compounds these are. We also invited a professor from Turkish University to our meeting and working groups and so on. And after all this work, we found these three main polluters. You see them here. You see the levels of the two PA compounds found the most, lazocapine and europine, and their N oxides. These plants are very potent. They have very high levels. For example, here heliotropium, you find European N oxide with about 306,000 microgram per kilogram. Okay, what did we do in Turkey to tackle this issue? first of all, you need an effective structure in the country of origin. You cannot do this by your own. You cannot do this alone. So we have worked with the Asian Exporters Association, which is located there, which is also a member of our association. And in 2019, trainings and seminars for farmers in all oregano grown areas in Denizli took place. So far, more than 1,200 participants, only farmers, joined the seminars. This has been continuing in 2020, but the progress has clearly been impeded with COVID restrictions. So the work is not as well widespread as we either need or would have liked. In addition, we had some of the main local companies who produce flyers and brochures for the growers that could not take place in the seminars. And the core message of all of this is always that foreign weed detection in oregano will mean no pay per hectare. Okay, where do we stand today? Okay, the headline is time is needed. Like you heard before from the other speakers, to reduce PA levels, this is a major challenge for the growers. Yeah, you can raise awareness, you can tell them how to do, but it's still not easy to decrease the levels that you find in the final product. So until now, as we have the awareness, it has increased significantly, and also the levels of PA, in this case in oregano, it has decreased. And by this, it means that the peak values are much lower. You won't find values of 24,000 microgram per kilogram as we found it in the previous years in the 2020 crop anymore. But however, in terms of compliance with the planned European maximum levels, only slight improvements have been noticed for the 2020 crop, despite a quite better field hygiene. Okay. So, as we don't have much time, I will stop here. The last slide is this one. Thank you for your attention, and I'm open for any questions that you might have.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Martin. Just a very quick question, and then we will have a couple of questions to Mr. Vestrate. One of the participants asked if the samples were from suppliers or you did the collection of the samples by country?
No, the samples were came from ESA members. So we told our members the conditions for the sampling. All samples have to be representable for a whole lot. And then we sent the samples to the university for the analysis.
Thanks a lot. So thanks also to the participants for being with us still. We had many questions to Mr. Vestrate. Many questions were on the kind of herbs or spices that would be affected by the new regulation. So maybe what we could do, Mr. Vestrate, if you could show again the slides where you list the products that will be concerned, so we can save a bit of time. And if you don't see herbs mentioned in the slides in that list, then they are not concerned by the regulation at this point. But as I said before, we could see other food products in the future. Thanks a lot. And you will receive the presentation. So don't worry, you will get the presentations from the speakers. So a couple of questions. Does the Commission have a contingency plan, given this is a big challenge for the growers? So do you have a kind of plan B in case growers are not able to meet the limits in 2021? And a question which is a bit connected to this one. As the discussion on analytical methods and sampling methods will continue in the next months, is there a possibility that the legal limits we have now will move into a benchmark approach? Is that an option? Thank you.
Thank you for the questions. As I mentioned in my presentation, it is indeed acknowledged that it is a challenge to meet the levels. It's also therefore that there is indeed foreseen a 2 years period, and also then a transitional measure foreseen for products placed on the market. It is also, in fact, it has also to be acknowledged that although the issue was already indeed in the EFSA opinion back in 2011 highlighted as an issue, and also we started also the discussion within the EU, but we needed more information and so on. So it is we can see that for certain sectors or certain production regions, in fact, really the focus on prevention and good practices have only been started quite recently. So, and I hope that indeed this will be indeed reinforced in the coming 2 years in order to be able to meet the maximum levels now put forward. As regards indeed, is it possible to have benchmark levels? No, because in fact we put it forward as maximum levels. And I would say, okay, of course, legislation can always be amended as such, but it would not be correct for me to say that there is this possibility. We are of the opinion that it is possible to meet the maximum levels by applying good practices, but of course, and that is acknowledged, that there will require indeed strengthened efforts towards the whole chain in order to be able to meet these levels. As regards, well, as regards the analysis, I would say there, in fact, we have these levels put forward, but as in fact also mentioned before in the presentation from the TIA Association, in fact, these pyrrolizidine alkaloids with the LOQ of 10 microgram per kilogram can be routinely analyzed by many laboratories in the EU. There was only the issue of indeed the separation, but that we had solved with providing for the co-elution. So yeah, so to conclude, well, indeed, it's acknowledged that the coming 2 years will indeed be critical for the sector to indeed put in place the good practices, and indeed there is not foreseen to indeed move the maximum levels into benchmark levels. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Just another quick question. It's true that we discussed a lot about cultivated herbs and spices. What about wild harvested products? Are they concerned by the same limits? I guess so.
Yes, yes. We do not make any difference between cultivated or wild. So far they are falling within the definition of culinary herbs. They are covered by the maximum level.
So thanks a lot to all the speakers, to Mr. Verstraete. Again, we will share all the presentations with the participants who registered to this webinar. It was very, very useful, a lot of information. We're a bit late, but I hope that you managed to stay till the end. I would like to thank SME Connect and the working group Health and Nutrition to give us the opportunity to go into the details about this very important topic. And now I give the floor to Horst for the final greetings.
Only short, because we are waiting now for the evening. And I want to say thank you. And I invite all the participants and also the speakers to our network, to our working groups. Our next event is planned about the new EU-Africa and farm-to-fork strategy with our other working group, Agriculture and Consumers. I think there are some common interests between these working groups. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening. Thank you, Alessia, for the very good moderation. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.